So when I think of Tara, or visualize Tara in front, or visualize myself as Tara, one thing that comes across always is her beauty. But it's not it's not the kind of beauty that we ordinarily think of, that incites our attachment. It's her beauty is an inner coming from an inner radiance of her compassion and wisdom. So when you see her external form, what it draws you into is the beauty of the mind that projected that form. And so when we think of Tara in front of ourselves as Tara, not only thinking of ourselves as physically beautiful, but trying to get into that mind state, the mind state that makes somebody beautiful, the inner beauty, which is what attracts other people. And the reason for attracting other people in Tara's state is to be able to lead them on the path to awakening. So it's not to get them to love us or, any of those other things that why we want people to like us. But it's completely so that we can be of the greatest benefit to them. And so also imagining ourselves having that incredible fortitude and compassion and wisdom that Tara has, that amazing peace of mind that is totally free of judgment. And then practicing ourselves abiding in that state of mind, or at least imagining what it would be like to have it. And then thinking what it would be like to act on a daily basis from that state of mind. And so that gives us an idea of what Buddhahood is, and it gives us an idea of how to get there, and of the potential that we have inside of ourselves to attain Tara's state. And so let's try to relate to others and relate to ourselves, relate to the environment as a fully awakened Buddha like Tara would do. And with that state of mind to share the Dharma together today. So I think this is a very productive use of our imagination, thinking of ourselves as Tara. Often how we use our imagination is thinking of ourselves, giving somebody a taste of their own medicine or beating them up or who knows what. Yeah. Embracing them passionately when they have no interest in us. Yeah. So it's to think of ourselves as having Tara's mental state. And then that is what makes us attractive to other sentient beings. And then that gives you, of course, a sense of confidence, to be Tara. And especially when you're in difficult situations. If you think I'm Tara, or if you're not doing the self-generation, you have Tara in your heart or Tara above on your head, and you think Tara's there, how is Tara going to relate to all these goings on? So especially if you catch your mind in a lot of judgment, be it of others or of ourselves, then you invoke Tara and think, oh, what's Tara going to think about all this? As you're sitting there listing somebody else's faults in your mind, hey, they do this and they do that, our judgmental mind. And then, well, what's Tara going to think about all that? Well, it's all going, Tara's not. It's all going to be completely absent in Tara's mind. So if we can see that, and, why is it absent in Tara's mind? Because it's just, distorted conceptualization based on ignorance, producing afflictions and self-centeredness. We have to do that kind of analytical meditation a lot to really understand how that works. And then when you understand how it works, it becomes much easier to say, it's just conceptualization, put it down. But if you don't understand how it works, and you say, it's conceptualization, put it down, what you'll wind up doing is stuffing it, and it's going to come out in other ways, because you're not truly in your heart believing that that's all conceptual garbage. So you have to really, in your heart, understand that. But when all this stuff comes up in the mind, we have to make an effort to understand it. We don't just say, well, if I say it's conceptual garbage, I'm stuffing it, so I won't say it's conceptual garbage. I'll just experience it and live in it. Well, we've been doing that since beginningless time. So now it's time, when we see afflictions in our mind, to look at them. And how are they working? And what are they based on? And how are the thoughts they're based on big fat lies? And how am I falling for these big fat lies? And what effect is it having on me and on the people around me? And on my future lives and on all sentient beings? So we don't just say, oh, well, there's afflictions in my mind, so I'm not going to suppress them. And then you sit and ruminate more about them. That's not applying the antidote. Then, next thing, doubt. I was going to print out the section from the 57 faults that Nagarjuna, of faults of attachment, that Nagarjuna mentioned, but I thought, let's not overdo it on the last day. Doubt is, you've gone through this whole wonderful thing, and then we end with doubt. Okay, so to really see doubt as a danger. So it says, roaming in the space of darkest ignorance, tormenting those who strive for ultimate aims. It is viciously lethal to liberation. The carnivorous demon of doubt, please protect us from this danger. Okay, so doubt is not just some kind of harmless thing. It's a carnivorous demon. Okay, so you don't want to meet this one and in an alley or even on a well-inhabited street. Yeah, this carnivorous demon of doubt is not something that's going to benefit us. But it can often be difficult to recognize doubt. Yeah, because there's, well, first of all, they talk about three kinds of doubt. One is inclined to the wrong conclusion. One is right between the correct and incorrect conclusion. And one is inclined towards the correct conclusion. So clearly the latter one is the least harmful. The first one was the most harmful. Okay? So, if we're trying to get to a realization, we start out with wrong views, what we usually have at the beginning. And then we go to the deluded doubt that's inclined towards these wrong views. So that's what this one is here, that kind of deluded doubt. And this is a step better than wrong views because at least it has some indecision in it. Whereas wrong view is just a stubborn, cynical, I know what's best and I'm not going to listen to anybody kind of view. Okay? So from wrong view, we go to deluded doubt, then we go to the doubt that's in the middle, then the doubt that's inclined towards the correct conclusion. Then and how do we transverse these? By hearing, thinking, and meditating, especially by learning and reflecting on the teachings. That's how we go from one to the other. Once we get to doubt, inclined towards the correct conclusion, then we go to correct assumption. So this is a mind that has the correct conclusion. It kind of understands the reasons, but the understanding of the reasons is not firm and solid. And so somebody else can come along, present you with some other reasons, and then you just change your mind. Okay? But it's better than doubt. And it's certainly better than wrong views, because with a correct assumption, you can start to put your energy in a good direction. You just have to be careful of, what you come in contact with, because the mind, you hear all sorts of other views out in the marketplace, and then your mind, oh, that one sounds really good. And in just observing a lot of things, I think my feeling, is that first people decide what they want to believe in order to feel good, and then they find a belief system that reinforces it. And they find the teachings that reinforce what they already believe. It shouldn't be like this. We should always come with an open, fresh mind, willing to examine things. But, for example, I've heard people say, well, I don't hold this opinion, but I've heard people say, when you lose a loved one, Buddhism isn't very comforting. Yeah, thinking of God is much more comforting. So some people, when they lose a loved one, they want to believe in God because they find comfort in that. Yeah, and so then they want to believe that because of an emotional need, and so therefore then they find the beliefs that support that. Okay, so there's all sorts of things that we first have a belief and then we find something that supports it. Unfortunately, because we often wind up with a lot of wrong beliefs that way. Okay, I mean, you look at what's happening with ISIS. You have these young people who, feel disempowered. They want something to empower them, so they're attracted to that kind of philosophy. Or the same goes for many different kinds of people, in a rapidly changing world where things are very insecure, then it's people really want something to hold on to that's their identity, so they know who they are. And so now what do we have is people like creating all sorts of identities and grasping onto them and making them into political causes and social causes. And I'm not saying that's bad. I mean, I'm all for civil rights and equal rights and that stuff. But often it's coming from an emotional need rather than a clear mental state that fully understands. You getting what I'm saying? Yeah. Let me just give you, again, I'll give a personal example. So I was born Jewish and, raised that way, but not very religious. And then, my generation, many of the people of my generation assimilating because we were raised American, we felt American. There was no longer this holding of a Jewish identity so strongly, Our grandparents, yeah, our parents holding very strongly because they had to, they fled the old country and became immigrants here because of persecution. So the one way, if you ever want to keep a minority alive, is persecute it and try and kill them off. Because the more you try and kill them off, the more they form an identity and the more they fight back. So that's what happened. Yeah. Then my parents' generation wanting the American dream. My generation saying, what are you guys doing? I mean, we're all just Americans. We've assimilated. But then the generation, or a few years after my birth, as the world became more shaky, more confusing, the people who were born in that generation, you have all these people who might have been raised as Reform Jews going back and being Orthodox. Yeah. And you'll find in Israel the people who are the most fervent Zionists clinging to the West Bank land are Americans. Yeah. Because they made Aliyah, they went to immigrate there out of an identity. Why? Being followers of my generation, which was completely, why are you making such a big deal about this? Those people, incredible strong identity. Why? Because the world had become a scary place. And you need to know who you are and who your people are and who's got your back. Yeah. So you create an identity. And then, of course, you look to the Bible and you find all sorts of reasons that support that. Okay? So this is just one example. This is the same kind of thing that you find with many people who are born again Christians. Yeah, very shaky in the world, not knowing who you are, what's going on. You get an identity as an evangelical Christian, and then you know who you are, what you believe, even all your political beliefs. Everything is set out for you, and it's all in the Bible. Okay? So it gives you a feeling of emotional security. So these are just some examples that I'm talking about. How we often start out with what feels good and then find the reasons to support it. So this is in the case of, I got off, that's a tangent I got off on, but I think it's an important tangent so that we kind of scrutinize our own mind. Yeah. Okay, so wrong view, deluded doubt, equal doubt, doubt inclined to the right conclusion, then correct assumption. Yeah. And so correct assumptions may start out with this emotional component. This is the belief system that emotionally makes me feel best. Okay. Not that it's the most reasonable or logical, but it's the one that emotionally makes me feel best. And I say this because His Holiness is always encouraging us to use reason and logic. Yeah, again and again and again he says that. Then from correct assumption, we go to an inferential cognizer. So this is a mind that understands has the correct conclusion through having thought about it and really understood well the logical arguments that support that conclusion. Okay, so that's a really valid mind that cannot be swayed when other people come and say, oh, but, there's one universal substance and we're all born of that, or, there's God who created us, and now science. Apparently there's something in science that some people are now saying supports the creation theory. Yeah, so but inference is just very clear. It can't be swayed. Yeah. Then from inference, by repeated meditation, we break through the conceptual appearance by which we're knowing something like emptiness or impermanence, and then we have direct perception of it. Okay, and so that direct perception, really is infallible, and that is our direct experience. Okay, so inferential cognizers make a very powerful impact on the mind, but they're not yet direct experience, so we have to keep going so we get to the non-conceptual state there. Okay, so here you see in the layout of how we start out where we are and how we get to be an Arya. Yeah, that's the progression. Now back to doubt, deluded doubt. Yeah. Okay, so roaming in the space of darkness, ignorance. So yeah, ignorance is very powerful. Ignorance not only obscures seeing how things actually exist, but according to the Prasangikas, it actively misapprehends how things exist. Yeah, so some Buddhist tenet schools say, oh, it's just obscures, it's like haze, you can't see. The Prasangikas say, yeah, that's true, plus it misapprehends things. Yeah, so it's not just the light is dim and you can't see well, but you're also thinking that the rope is a snake. Okay? So roaming in the space of darkness, ignorance, tormenting those who strive for ultimate aims. So our ultimate aims, liberation, full awakening. How does doubt torment us if we're striving for those ultimate aims? This kind of doubt is the greatest yes, but that you can ever imagine. Yeah. Sometimes it doesn't even have the yes part. It's just the but part. Yeah. And we hear something and then immediately the mind goes, but. So before we even think seriously about it, we're reacting. Okay, with our ifs, ands, and buts. It's quite interesting that the article the op-ed article from His Holiness was in the Wall Street Journal, and so I started reading the comments. Very interesting, and you can see some people, they didn't really think about what His Holiness said, but their comments are just, but, yeah. And then, of course, going out into all kinds of different topics that don't have to do with what His Holiness said. But that's okay. They want an outlet to discuss. Yeah. But it's the ones that say, but, and tomorrow I'll do a BBC on that article, because I've also realized that article was written based on comments that His Holiness made maybe 20 years ago. And things have changed a lot since then. And so I think now he may make different comments. I don't know if he is, but I would suspect, or if not, I might bring it up. Yeah. Anyway, that's for tomorrow's BBC. Back to deluded doubt. We can't get away from deluded doubt. You see, it torments us. So we're striving for liberation, for full awakening. And doubt says, yeah, and the thing that's difficult about doubt is it's hard because we're not so in touch with our mind, we don't know our minds very well, to actually be able to discern in our own experience what is deluded doubt and what is curiosity and what is wise questioning. Yeah, we can't always discern the difference between those. Yeah, so I think if it's curiosity or wise questioning, you're approaching something with an open mind. It's, the mind is more relaxed when we're asking the question. We're asking an open question. Please explain this to me. Or I don't understand how, why the Buddha said this. Or I don't understand why this makes sense. Please explain it to me. So that's curiosity and willingness to learn. Yeah. Doubt is, yeah, and it's not the cynicism of wrong views. It's more the, well, how do you really know that? Come on. Yeah. Or, the wrong views is like cynically, well, yeah, prove it to me, buddy. The deluded doubt is a little softer. Yeah. It's your responsibility to prove it to me. Yeah, not my responsibility to think about it. Okay, so, there's a certain tension with deluded doubt. Yeah, there's a tension in the mind. It's really, yes, but. Okay, so if we fall prey to that kind of doubt a lot, it really impedes our practice because we start to doubt the method that we're practicing. Yeah. So Buddha said attachment brings suffering. And we go, yes, but, attachment also makes me really happy. And everybody else is attached. And I mostly get what I want. Sometimes not, but mostly, meaning today I'm in a good mood. Yeah, so I get what I want. So why do I have to say attachment is to be abandoned? Yeah. And so if we don't understand that, we have that kind of deluded doubt, then we're not going to make any attempt to abandon attachment because we don't really believe in the reason why to do it. We don't understand that. Yeah. So it prevents us from going forth, going on. So they say doubt is like trying to sew with a two-pointed needle. Yeah? You can't get through on either side. You're completely stymied, sitting there in your doubt. Yeah, not getting anywhere. So that is why it's called a carnivorous demon, because that doubt just eats us up and prevents us from going forward in a really healthy way. Okay? So, to discover if you have doubt, you have to look at what thoughts are going on in your mind. Yeah. And I'm not saying if you have deluded doubt, suppress it. Yeah. But look at that and say, is there a sincere question in there? Or am I just, being quite arrogant and making a lot of unnecessary questions? Because I think arrogance can come into deluded doubt too. Yeah. I'm so smart, I'm not going to believe that. You make me believe it. Yeah. But that's really going towards wrong views, that kind of attitude. But, so to see, is this a sincere question I have? And if it is, then ask questions, read books, and then think about what you learned. Yeah, think about it well. Nobody else can think about things for us. People can present 102 arguments, but if we don't think about them, our doubt is not going to get cleared up. Okay. If you find that your mind is really going quite deluded doubt to this kind of yeah, 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 make me believe that you're full of BS. You know, if you find your mind going to that extreme, then that's definitely something non-virtuous that you don't want to get caught up in. And you have to, say, what in the world is going on in my mind? What am I trying to prove through that kind of arrogance, Like if I don't believe it, then find something I do believe and practice it, instead of just sit there and look around at everybody else and going, boo, Okay. I went through a stage of that in my search, so I know that quite well. Okay, tormenting those who strive for ultimate aims. It is viciously lethal to liberation. Yeah, it's lethal because we don't get anywhere. We just sit there dwelling in our inclined towards the wrong conclusion mind, not thinking, not really investigating. So the carnivorous demon of doubt, please protect us from this danger. Okay, so you had a question?
This distinction between wise questioning and doubt is something I've really been struggling with for the last year. And coming out of studying in a different lineage for a number of years, I really can't help but that other lineage really emphasizes guru yoga, and the guru is Buddha and thou shalt not question. But I see cracks, fissures at the top on down, and they're too obvious to ignore. For example, two karmapas. Mm-hmm. How can there be two karmapas? And I hear from my group, I hear one version, and then I've watched a lot of Dharma talks on from YouTube, and I heard another version from the other group, and that sounded equally plausible. And then I see high-ranking tulkus, disrobing and saying, no, the monastery and this whole thing is abusive. And then I see the human frailties of my own teacher. And it's really difficult because I'm struggling with this. I long for devotion, and I feel the devotion, certainly to Tara. Mm-hmm. but the other teachings I have problems with, and I'm so I know myself well enough to know how much denial I have built into me, and how I can intellectualize my way out of almost anything, and that's not a healthy place for me to be. And this is something I've really struggled with. So.
Okay. Yeah. A lot of people struggle with this. And, okay, I'm going to speak from my take on the situation as informed by many of His Holiness, what His Holiness says. So this thing of see the Guru as Buddha and don't question is advice that is meant for somebody who is a very high-level tantric practitioner. Yeah? They're like Tilopa and Naropa level of tantric practitioner. What's happened in Tibetan Buddhism is because there's so much respect for Tantra that many people have brought that down to even the beginner level, saying from the beginning you see your Guru as the Buddha and you see all actions as perfect. Okay? His Holiness says that saying that in a general public way is poison. Holiness is so practical. He calls it like it is. And he says that's poison because it distorts the mind of the disciple and it distorts the minds of the teachers. Yeah. So what he talks about is 3 levels of spiritual mentors according to the level of practice that we're at. Okay? So the first level is our fundamental vehicle, spiritual master. So this is somebody who introduces us to the Dharma, teaches us the 4 truths, gives us refuge and our pratimoksha precepts, be they lay precepts or monastic precepts. Okay, so somebody who's teaching us in this way and getting us interested in Dharma and seeing the possibility of attaining liberation and awakening. Okay? And this person, according to the Vinaya scriptures, you see as a representative of the Buddha. You don't see them as the Buddha. There's somebody who's like you, who's practicing very hard, and they're like an older brother, an older sister, or a mother, father, somebody like that, educating you and bringing you along. But it also says in Vinaya that if your spiritual mentor is transgressing precepts, then you should comment on it. Yeah, to help that person, not with a judgmental, critical mind, but with a mind of compassion, saying, this, looks like a transgression, and then, the Sangha has to deal with it if somebody's transgressed, okay? Then the level up from that is somebody who teaches us the perfection vehicle, the paramita yana, the bodhisattva path. So this is someone who's going to teach us how to generate bodhicitta. They're going to teach us the 6 perfections, 6 far-reaching practices. They're the ones who give us the bodhisattva precepts. Yeah. And so this person, we regard, it says to regard them as like an emanation of the Buddha. Yeah. So again, not really the Buddha, but an emanation. But it's different than somebody who's a representative. Okay? Then, when you progress in your spiritual practice and you have very good foundation, very good walls, then you put the ceiling on and you enter the Vajra vehicle, or Tantrayana. And then it's with that they say to see your teacher as the Buddha. And that's especially emphasized in highest Yoga Tantra. Now, initially in ancient India, Tantra was very private. It was not widely practiced. It was really quite private because there was a lot of potential for misunderstanding. Yeah, that's why it's often called, kind of like the secret mantra. Secret not meaning, secret meaning that it's private. Yeah. And so Tantra initiation is given only to people who are fully qualified. This is the way it says in the scriptures. And, those are the people who receive the tantric precepts and pledges and so on. But what's happened over the years, especially in Tibet, is people love Tantra so much that tantric initiation started to be given very, very publicly. Yeah. And so then the teachers taught according to this, and they taught Guru Yoga, starting people out with Guru Yoga when they're very beginners, with the idea that these people will eventually enter Tantra. So start them out with Guru Yoga and this whole perspective right now. Yeah. So that was as I understand it, the thinking behind it and how this whole thing evolved to the point where now people often they come into a Dharma center, and if an initiation is being given, they sit there and take the initiation, although I'm not so sure they actually take it because they can't track it. Yeah, they don't really know what's going on. And it's just very public like that. And then people afterwards, when they hear what the tantric pledges are, the commitments are, I can't tell you how many people call me and they're in crisis saying, I didn't sign up for all of this. And I just, was there on the day they were doing this, and everybody said, yeah, come. It's a big blessing and it's great. And it's hard to have this, so go ahead. And, and so they get very, very confused. Yeah. So what His Holiness recommends is, here again, going back to the scriptures. Yeah, in the Vinaya, it talks about what are the qualities for a fundamental guru, a fundamental vehicle, spiritual mentor. What qualities do you look for? Yeah, you have to look for ethical discipline. You have to look for knowledge of the scriptures. You have to look for people who are compassionate, who want to teach you out of compassion. Yeah. Then, for when you start studying the Bodhisattva vehicle, then again in Maitreya listed 10 qualities to look for in a fully qualified Mahayana teacher. So you learn those 10 qualities, well trained in ethical conduct, well trained in meditation. Yeah, they have the correct view of reality. Yeah, they can explain the Dharma and all the reasons behind the view of reality. They are teaching with a completely altruistic mind, not to get money and fame. They teach tirelessly, and they're extremely patient because we disciples sometimes are pretty obnoxious. Yeah, so we look for teachers with those kind of qualities. What's happened so often in the West is because Buddhism is new here, people don't know that you're supposed to check out the qualities of a spiritual mentor before taking that person as your teacher. Yeah, they don't know that. And then they don't know what the qualities of a spiritual mentor are. And so they find themselves, going into things and then finding out later what's expected of them. And then it becomes very, very difficult. Yeah. Then on top of that, yeah, you're told that if you break the connection with somebody who's one of your teachers, that's the fast ticket to the hell realm. Just what you always wanted to hear when you're having questions and doubts about this person is, if you break the connection, you're going to hell. Now that really helps you. Yeah, maybe in old Tibet, that way of speaking helped people. Yeah, it's a very different culture. In our culture, that way of speaking does not help people. It just makes people anxious, it makes them fearful, and that way of talking makes some people give up the Dharma, even though that way of speaking is in the intent is to make them stay in the Dharma. Because of our culture, it sometimes makes people just throw the towel in. Okay? Now, the whole reason for, why is this thing of seeing the Guru as the Buddha in Tantra? Okay? Because in Tantra, you're transforming yourself into the deity, you're transforming the environment in your meditation into a pure land. You're thinking of other sentient beings as being the deity. So you're trying to, this is actually a technique for helping us to overcome our defilements and our ordinary perception. Yeah? The point, so it would be very strange if in the middle of seeing yourself, sentient beings, and the environment as deities in a pure land, if you were to then see your teacher as an ordinary sentient being. That just wouldn't work. Okay. So of course you have to see your teacher as a Buddha, as a deity, in the Tantra when you're doing it, that kind of thing. One of the reasons for that, I think they brought it down to also people who were beginners. I think the ultimate aim of that way of speaking is, the actual purpose is so that people will continue their Dharma practice even when they have problems with their teacher. Okay, I think that's what it's designed to do, because you're taught that if you see faults in your teacher, you're supposed to think that is only your own wrong conception mind. That person is perfect. This is solely your own wrong conception mind. So for people who can do that, then it keeps their mind steady in faith in the Dharma, and they continue practicing. Yeah. And the thing, what you want to prevent is people saying, all these people have so many faults and they're doing so many negative things and I'm just fed up with it. Goodbye. So you lose your faith in your teacher, and then it makes you lose faith in the Dharma too. Because if that teacher's acting in that way, then I can't trust anything they told me. So that way of thinking it's an incorrect way of thinking, and it's very, very dangerous. Okay? Why? Because the Dharma, the path to liberation, to full awakening, in itself, is completely pure. Yeah, it's a path that works. We can trust that path. If you read in the scriptures, starting with, the sutras and then the commentaries, you can understand many things. We need to read a lot of commentaries because sometimes things are hard to understand. But you can really get the understanding of where it's going and develop trust in the Dharma that way. religious institutions are created by human beings. Yeah? We have to differentiate the Dharma from the religious institution. Okay? The Dharma is pure. We never abandon the Dharma. That's the path that's going to take us where we want to go. Religious institutions are created by human beings with the aspiration to protect the Dharma. But not everybody in a religious institution is highly realized. Not everybody who has the title of Tulku or Rinpoche is a bodhisattva who has determined their own future rebirth. This is a cultural thing. Buddha never taught identifying the incarnations. Yeah, this is a Tibetan cultural thing that serves several purposes. One purpose is it continued. For people who had faith in this teacher, it gave them something to hold on to after that teacher passed away. It also was a way to pass down property. If you look at it from a sociological viewpoint, that's how property was passed down. Because the Rinpoches who were monks did not have children. But they had labrangs, and people would give them donations and all sorts of stuff. What do you do with this when the Rinpoche dies? If you have a system of incarnation, then you pass it to the next rebirth of, the next incarnation of that master. So it also served a social function. Yeah. We're also told, why the gurus are Buddhists. First of all, it's our own wrong conception mind. So what if we're seeing faults? It's our problem, our wrong conception mind. And we're also told that the teachers deliberately manifest as ordinary human beings in order to communicate with us. Okay? That part, I think, is true. When Buddhists manifest to benefit us, they don't kind of appear in the middle of Times Square in a flash of light saying, I'm the Buddha here to teach you the Dharma and watch my miracles. Yeah. Because, why don't enlightened beings appear that way in our day and age? Because if they did, we would just stand there awestruck and worship them, and we wouldn't listen to what they were teaching us, and we wouldn't practice it. We would just worship somebody who has magical powers. So I think, to me it makes a lot of sense. Yeah, the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas appear as ordinary beings. Yeah, who are one step ahead of us, or 100 steps ahead of us. Yeah, so they appear that way, and we can rely on them, and there's a way we can connect with them. If they were so far ahead, we couldn't connect with them. I mean, the Buddha appeared as an ordinary person. Yeah, he was a prince. We can connect with him. Yeah, his story sneaking out on his parents, we can connect with that. Yeah. Yeah. So, so that way of appearing, is very skillful. Yeah. But it's the thing of saying that all of our teachers, everything they do is perfect. That's the part that gets really dicey. That they're Buddha, so all their actions are perfect. Then what does perfect mean? What's the definition of perfect? Yeah. I don't know about you, but my definition of perfect is somebody acts the way I want them and expect them to act when I want and expect them to act that way. That's not a very good definition of perfect. Okay? So And I think that people say, do you see your guru as the Buddha? Therefore, my guru knows everything. So I talked to one person once, and it really disturbed her mind that when our teacher was going somewhere, he had to ask directions of how to get there. Because he was a Buddha and he should know. Okay? I don't put that kind of expectation on my teachers, And for me, I find that being told you must see somebody's action as perfect, you must see them as a Buddha. Yeah, that is not a skillful way to work with a mind like mine. Okay. I have great reverence for my teachers, but my reverence comes because I was given the freedom to check them out, to look closely, to experience the effects of their teachings on me, and to see how they operate in the world. And that's why I respect them and love them so much. I feel like I have some empirical evidence. It's not just because somebody told me that if I don't see them as Buddha, I'm going to hell. Yeah? Now, does that mean that I think everything my teachers do is perfect? Okay. Again, I don't even ask that question because I don't know what perfect means. Okay. I ask the question, do I agree with everything my teacher does? Okay. Now, I don't agree with everything all my teachers do. Okay. But that doesn't mean that they're wrong because I don't agree with them. You see, this is where we often get hung up. If somebody doesn't agree with me, if somebody doesn't have the same opinion as me, that means they're wrong. I don't buy that argument. To me, that is not a correct syllogism. Okay? They are wrong. Their idea is wrong because they don't agree with mine. That is not a correct syllogism. Okay, it's a faulty one. So what I've had to learn is this is a free world, and people have different ways of seeing things and different ways of doing things. And they do and see things in ways that make sense to them. And these things may not make sense to me, but that's okay. Yeah. So they may have certain preferences, and I have other preferences. That doesn't mean mine are wrong, and it doesn't mean theirs are wrong. It just means we have different preferences, or we have different ways of doing things. Okay? So this view pertains to situations. For example, some of my teachers love Tibetan tea. Yeah? Butter, salt, galore. My arteries start quivering just thinking of ingesting that kind of stuff. Yeah? It's so bad for your health. Yeah? But they love it. And they don't want to stop drinking it. And however many arguments I present about how it's bad for your health and you should have a long life to continue teaching us, doesn't matter. They want to drink their Tibetan tea. Okay? Now, does that mean that they are no longer a reliable spiritual mentor? Yeah, because they drink Tibetan tea despite my excellent arguments and scientific evidence. No, doesn't mean they're not a reliable spiritual mentor. It just means they want to drink their Tibetan tea. I disagree. So what? Yeah, I didn't come here to learn, a correct diet. I didn't come to learn tea making. I can stand that we have a difference of opinion. Okay. Now, one of my teachers thought George W. Bush was a great president. This is a step up from the Tibetan tea. You know? Okay, Tibetan tea I can handle. You think George W. was a good president? Why did he think that he was a good president? Because he had His Holiness visit the White House, and because he spoke about human rights to China. So that's all he needed for George to be a good president. He didn't think about the Iraqi war and all that nonsense that Georgie got us into. He didn't care about that. He cared about, George likes His Holiness and understands the plight of the Tibetan people. And he thought he was a great president. I had a different opinion. Yeah. Does that mean that he's not a good spiritual mentor? Just because he liked George W.? Does that mean that I throw him out? Yeah. Because he thought, that who got us into the Iraqi war was a good No. He has different political opinions than I do. Yeah. I didn't come here to learn politics. I came here to learn the path to liberation, the path to awakening. He has his reasons. I have my reasons. It's okay. I can tolerate that kind of difference. Now, let's kick it up a bit. Okay. Some teachers think that women are inferior. Or even if they say women have equal intelligence, their behavior does not illustrate that. Now, okay, Tibetan tea is okay. Politics is okay. View on women? That one's harder. Yeah. If they were really Buddhas, shouldn't they see all sentient beings equal? They say, yes, everybody has Buddha potential, but then they don't treat us the same way. Or they say, yes, everybody has Buddha potential, even the cockroaches and the mosquitoes. So of course women do. Now that makes you feel really good. Yeah. Do I just say, oh, he has this opinion of women, like, forget it, and he thinks in Dharma centers that women should sit behind the men? Yeah. This is the standard approach in Tibetan Buddhist centers. The women sit behind the men. Well, the nuns sit behind the monks. The women and the lay women and laymen sit equal. But standard fare in Western Buddhist centers, the nuns sit behind the monks. Okay? Even if you're a fully ordained nun, they'll put you behind the monks. So does that mean that I just throw out the Dharma because of that? Because of their cultural thing? I mean, it's a patriarchal culture. Does that mean I throw out the Dharma because of that? If I did, I would be really stupid. Yeah. If I said what the Buddha taught is not the path to liberation, simply because my teachers think in that way, or simply because you find a few remarks in the Vinaya or in the sutras like that, that would be pretty dumb of me. If my whole faith hinged on how they thought about women. as if that were the key to awakening your views on women. Okay? So there's all sorts of things. When you look in the Vinaya and certain things, there's historical ways of analysis where, do you take everything that's written there as literal or not? There's a bunch of stuff that I personally say, I don't know if it's to be taken literal or not, but, according to the culture I grew up in, thinking that way isn't very helpful, and thinking in that way turns people away from the Dharma. And since I'm living in the West now, I'm not living in India anymore, then I think there's the freedom to change the perspective on some of these things. Okay? I'm not criticizing the Buddha. I'm not saying the scriptures aren't true. I'm saying we reinterpret things for our present situation according to what we think is the actual intent of the Buddha, the actual thought of the Buddha, what he wants. Which is, he wants everybody to become awakened ASAP. Yeah? So if those kind of views of women do not support that, and if they scare people away from the Dharma, then they're antithetical to what the Buddha is trying to accomplish. So I can endure that, because now I live in the West. When I go back to India for a few months, I can, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. I can do that. But now I live in the West. Okay? Now, thank goodness none of my teachers are doing the following. Yeah. But let's say, I really lucked out. My teachers have incredibly good ethical conduct. Yeah. But let's say one of them was sleeping with many of his female students. Or let's say one of them was extorting money, or not extorting money, checking the account books in a different way. Is that how you say embezzling in a polite way? Yeah. Huh? Yes, creative bookkeeping. Okay. So if one of my teachers had creative bookkeeping, yeah, or they were sleeping around, or they were, falling over drunk, yeah, those things, for me, that's where I cut the line. It's like, okay, there's some level here of, lack of ethical conduct that, for me, if somebody is acting in that way, then I can't trust them as my teacher. But that doesn't mean that I throw out everything they taught me. Rather, I'm grateful for everything they taught me, because this hasn't happened to me, thank goodness, but if it did, I would say, I'm grateful for everything they taught me, because without them teaching me in the past, I wouldn't have met the Dharma, I wouldn't have practiced, I would be totally ignorant. So I'm very grateful. But there's certain behavior right now that I cannot accept as the behavior of a spiritual master. So I am going to keep a respectful distance. So this is what His Holiness Dalai Lama says to do. Yeah, you don't throw the person out with disgust. You remain grateful for what they taught you, but you maintain a respectful distance, meaning you don't go to their teachings anymore. But you don't make a big deal about it and criticize them and make a big hullabaloo. And you go and cultivate relationships with other teachers. And you continue your Dharma practice. Yeah, because that person, even though they may have some ethical problems, taught you something that was reliable Dharma. Now, Okay, let's up it again, because I've seen this also happen. What happens if somebody starts out teaching you the Dharma and then goes on to teach you all sorts of weird stuff? Yeah? So this has happened. That weird stuff that is not Dharma, that is just weird stuff. Yeah? Then I would, definitely say thank you for what you told me, taught me. Keep a respectful distance. And then I would go back and I would look and, okay, what did they teach me that is straight, that accords with the Buddhist teachings? And where is the point where they started teaching non-Buddhist views and doing weird things? Okay, so the part that, accords with the general Buddhist view, the part that, that was really accurate, I'll continue practicing. If perchance I got involved in some of the other stuff, I will leave that aside because I'm seeing that that is not what the Buddha taught. Okay? So I think you try and do all of this with a mind that is evenly balanced, that isn't given to anger. Yeah? And we're not given to anger because we haven't developed all sorts of unrealistic expectations to start with, thinking that this person is Buddha and therefore they're perfect. Okay? Now somebody could say, well, they may be a manifestation of the Buddha, who for those particular disciples benefit. They're teaching Buddhism and then teaching some weird stuff, because that's going to benefit those particular disciples. Okay, I don't know. I'm not going to judge somebody and say who they are, but I'm not going to follow the weird stuff, and I'm not going to follow that person. Okay? Yeah. But I don't have to get all angry. I can talk about and say, this accords with what the Buddha said, this doesn't accord with what the Buddha said. And I talk about this generally now too when we talk about Dharma light, yeah, and secular Buddhism, this kind. I clearly state things, but, I'm not trying to ruin anybody's reputation. I'm not angry at the people who have different ideas than me. I'm just trying to give people clear information so they can use their own wisdom. That was a long answer to a short question. Okay? But that's how I see the whole thing. And with under His Holiness's guidance. Yeah. His Holiness, who you can tell I completely adore and trust, he always says, I'm just a simple Buddhist monk. Yeah. People come up, will go up to His Holiness. Are you the Buddha? Are you Chenrezig? We hear that you're Chenrezig. Are you Chenrezig? He doesn't go in for any of that stuff. I'm a simple Buddhist monk. Yeah. And he says, I am, when I teach, I don't see myself as a teacher unless I am giving highest class Tantra initiation, in which I have to. But otherwise, I see myself as an older brother, he says, just sharing what I know with people. So if that's the way His Holiness sees himself, despite his qualities, for me, that's the way I think I'm going to see myself. Other people have their own choice. But, when you're with His Holiness, it's very clear. He's not trying to get you to be a Buddhist so he can say, my religion has more converts than other people do. He's not trying to have a group of followers. He's not trying to get any money. When he teaches in the West, he tells the organizers, make the tickets as cheap as possible, and if there's any profit, give it away. And he has them at the end of a series of teachings, give the whole financial report and tell if there's profits where they're giving it to. So, he's a very good example of this kind of thing. Okay? So, last verse. Welcome, Dan and Julia. Come on in. So this is the dedication verse. Through these praises and requests to you, quell conditions unfavorable to the Dharma. May we have long life, merit, wealth, wisdom, and all conditions conducive to practice. So that's a very, very encompassing dedication verse for everything. Okay, quite beautiful.